Welcome back to further update on the layout. And first of all, I'm going to have to give a shout out to one of my subscribers, Phil, who has very kindly helped me out with some catenary masts. He sent me these here for me to use, as I was struggling to find any available at the moment. So I'm going to use what I can to complete the main line from there to there, and then I will replace them because it's just a borrow, so to speak, and once I find some replacements I will send them back to him. So Phil, thanks again. You've allowed me to be able to continue with this update to my layout, although I'm not really sure when I'm actually going to do the masts. Probably quite soon. I was actually worried about having to work and lean over the layout and work on the landscape with the masts in the way, but I have actually been working so far on the layout here and leaning over, and I've avoided damaging any of the masts, etc. here, so I think I will be able to do that. So one of the next jobs is to get the masts positioned, work out the exact spacings, as I've roughly marked where each one will go. Now obviously there's going to be the gap between the masts is governed by the wires. I will be using the Volmer lengths of wire, but it will not work out exactly, so there will be a point somewhere, and I think I'll make it here, where the length is not going to be a standard length, and either I will have to shorten some of the wires, or, as I suspect, I'm probably going to have to use a longer wire. And for that I do have some of the wires left over when I did my masts that span the station, and these lengths are actually longer than the standard Volmer length of wire, so they're easier to trim, and I'll be able to blend that in. From the rough calculations that I've done, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference, so not very noticeable, and I'll probably do it around about here where the bridge goes over, so it won't stand out as much that there is actually a gap or a distance between the masts that is not standard. So this is something that will be happening soon, but for now I am going to work on this section of the landscape here and remove the landscape, the grass, etc., some of the trees, remove this length of straight because it only really needs to be straight to here, but as I said, I'm going to try with a piece of flex track where the join is there and come round to here. I've actually measured it out, and unfortunately it is going to be longer than one length of flex track, so I may just have the straight coming to here, and then I may just use the flex track from here, start the curve round and come to probably about here, and then just use a small straight section to connect from here to the rest of the branch line. But I'll only know the exact dimensions once I've built this part of the bridge, so I know where the curve starts. This is, before I've mentioned before, I want to actually start it as soon as I can once the line crosses the main line, so probably from about here is when I'll start the curve, because I want this to be quite a shallow curve. Yeah, not too sharp a bend, although not as sweeping as the main line, but I still want it to be nice, a nice sort of curve as it comes up the incline and round, and trains move into the station. So I'm going to carry on with that, and I'll show you the update of that once I'm finished. Further update today. That's the bridge weathered. Just made it look grimy. Just put some dirt into all the nooks and crannies. Bit of rust here and there, but not too much. Still looks a little bit shiny, but I'm going to spray that with a matte varnish just to dull that down. It shouldn't be shiny, it should just be dirty and grimy. So quite pleased with how that's come out. So next stage will be to lift up the track. As I said, quite easy. Just this little section needs to be lifted out, and I'll just slot the bridge back into position. I still think I've got to paint these plinths, etc., for the supports on the top here. Not that you really actually see it when the bridge is installed, and then that'll be that part done. I can fix the track down permanently, and then think about the ballasting of this section here. But before I get to that, I still haven't started the ballasting on this main line yet. Here's the girder bridge that I have painted, and just trying to hold it up so you can see it in the light. Yeah, it's a bit rusty, grimy, and the light actually isn't doing it any justice at all in here. So as you can see, some bits of rust, flaking paint, and here, and I think on this side, I can hold the camera steady. You can see it's grimy, but there's also patches where it's been repainted for whatever reason. So once that's in place, and again toned down just a little bit, I think that will blend in quite nicely with the landscape, and that's approximately where it's going to go from here to here. Here's one of the Catenary masts that I've finished painting. As you can see, it's ready for installation. I haven't painted the end bit here because I'll need to attach the masts, the wires, once the masts are attached to the layout, and then I'll finish off painting the wires in this sort of dull grey colour, as I have with all my other masts on the layout. So well, hopefully I can get them installed very soon, and I can get the track ballasted, and then move on to the next part of the update to the layout. Okay, now the next part, I've put the bridge into place. Not permanently yet, but that will be roughly where it's going to go. And what I've done, come around here, is very roughly laid out the track. I've just used set track here, just so I get an indication of the curvature, etc. It's not quite right, but it gives me a good idea of what it's going to look like. I still think I need to have this come around here a little bit and like this. But I'll play around with the layout, and we'll see how that goes. I've also got the train running on my main line, and I've painted the rails as well on the main line, ready for the next part of the process, which will be installing the catenary masts and then doing the ballasting. Watch this continue its journey. Yes, very happy with that. So we'll see how that progresses once I work out the catenary and start the ballasting. And here we have the very first test run on the branch line and through the station. As I said, I don't expect this to work because the track's only in place temporarily, but we'll see how it looks. There we go, coming round, across the bridge, and into the station. Very nice. That was actually surprising for me that actually worked. As I said, the track's not in place yet, just a test. But so far, so good. So I've done a couple of little adjustments. So it's the first test run. So I've got the train coming round again, and there it is. We shall see if there's any issues. I don't think there will be. Something I have noticed, which I'll show you once the train has gone through. It doesn't. There's not a problem getting up the gradient, which is quite gentle. In the station. It's just a test, but I can already see the line coming out of the station isn't straight, and it should actually be about here. But as I said, it's only temporary. If I move that across, it means I have to put something in there. And the whole purpose of this is, once I'm happy with the layout, I'm going to take some paper and make a template, if you will, of the geometry, and so that I can cut out again a piece of this from where the bridge starts, and just have a nice gentle piece of bedding for the track. But I don't think I'm that far away, to be honest. You can see from the ruler how off I am. Not much. So from here, and then round. I have to see if I can, what I need to do that. Just some small bits of track. I've actually got a couple of bits of flexi track left over. I may be able to cut something to size to fill that area. But progress is good. And that will be the big job for the weekend, is to sort all this out and get the final geometry, and then lay the track once I've cut out the board, and then move on to the other things, because once that's done, it's really just landscaping left to worry about. As I said before, the ballasting and the catenary masts, and then onto the scenics for the station, crossing, goods shed, which I've still yet to decide what I want to put there, and the farm, etc. over there. and some other types of building here. I'm still not sure yet what that's going to be, but I'll be thinking about that in the coming days and weeks. Okay, here we have now my 2-coach passenger train kind of in the opposite direction to test the track. Let's see, the bridge clearance is okay as well. It should be. It's done it before. It's tight, but it does it. As you can see, it was nice and smooth. And we go to the station, and it would stop, and then it carries on. I have actually figured out something I need to consider, although if I'm going to use flex track here, it's not that much of an issue. But when I laid this track here, I cut a little 15-degree radius, 15-degree angle track in half, so that's approximately a 7-degree turn, and I haven't allowed for that here, and that's why this should actually be more this way and then comes around. But I've also got to consider power, so as I said before, there'll be a bit of flex track, might even be from the point there, it'll be straight and then curve it around. It's not long enough to do it in one piece. I think it ends roughly about here. That means I can put some dropper wires on it and not worry about power, etc. on that piece of track, and then just somehow either use another bit of flex track for that, or just some set track. But I'll decide on that later. But I think definitely some flex track from here across and around is the way to go, and that way I can compensate for that piece of fixed track that I actually trimmed down. So something for me to consider when I make my template, because it will have to come down here. Okay, that's enough for tonight. Keep on watching and see how I get on. Thanks, bye. Okay, it's a bit of a mess at the moment, but I've worked out the height here, so I'm just gluing down these bits of wood to support the bridge, which will eventually sit something like that. And then I have my template that I've cut out, which will go approximately there to there. I need to, once all this is glued, I will find the final place to trim that edge. I can just fill this little gap here with a small piece to raise it up, but I'm just leaving that blank so I can put a little piece of plastic card or whatever, just to make sure it's the right level. And that's sort of the first view of what the bridge will look like. And then I have my embankments, which I've just started to paint. Just picked out some of the bricks, and I will then give it, so I'm trying to focus here, give it a wash and a slight weathering. I think that will just blend right in. The colours look a bit bright on some of the bricks, but once the weathering and the wash is done, that will get toned right down, and then they will just be raised and sit and support the bridge. And then I'll just pack it in underneath. And then I'm still not sure what I'm doing here. Probably some sort of brick wall, 4 to 5 centimeters high, and then landscaped to make the level of the station. So I'm just waiting for that glue to dry, and then I will get this placed into position and then get the track laid. As I said before, I keep this bit of track here, and then from here round it's going to be just a piece of flexi track. I think it ends about here, and then just another piece. I'm not sure if I'm just going to cut another flexi track down to there or just use some of the set track that I've got left over. I'll decide once I get the flexi track in and see exactly what it looks like. So that's all for now. I'll be back soon once I get this little job done. Okay, here we have the bridge. Not temporarily in place, but that's how it's going to look. I've just put some little cardboard shims underneath to get the right height, but that's only temporary. But the actual bridge position is where it will be, and that's my bit of board that I cut out, again just with some track temporarily laid. Just want to do some testing now and figure out what I need to do for the landscape. And we'll cut these bits off here to make that a bit more even. And part of the testing, I've got my Prussian G12. I'm going to come around, and we'll see if that manages to get through the new section without any issues. It should do. All the other tests I've done so far have been successful. The only issue is on this new section of track that I've laid. There are no dropper wires or anything. I'm relying purely on the metal joiners for the track to make all the connections necessary. Let's see. Oh, on top of there, it seems to slow down a bit. It certainly crosses the bridge nicely. And round the curve and down the incline and past the freight yard. So yes, quite successful. Okay, so I'm just going to run a few other engines backwards and forwards now. Make sure that everything, especially the clearance on this bridge, is fine. It's tight, but it should work for all my diesels and steam engines that will be using this particular section of track. And just as a bonus, here we have passenger train coming. That's looking good. So hopefully, as I said, once the testing's all done and I get the final track laid, I can start on the next part of the project, which is the ballasting and the catenary, as I said previously, for the main line. Ballasting for this section, the branch line, and then working on the landscaping. But I just want to make sure everything's running nicely before I start any of that, in case I have to make any changes. Okay, so thanks for watching, and watch out for further updates. Here's the view from the station up the layout. As you can see, you're able to see the branch line and the main line and the sweeping bend that I've put in. And I think it does look a lot better. You get to see a lot more of the trains running instead of being hidden in that old section of tunnel. And the railroad station, I think, is going to look great when it's finished and all the landscape done, etc. The only thing I've got to do now is think about this bit of line here, what I want to do with this area. But for now, the first stage of the renovation is done, and just a lot of testing to be done now on this. I think I'll run a few trains and carry on with the work. Thanks. Keep on watching. Bye.